The math operations fall into two categories. You are either going to be multiplying and dividing numbers, that's category number one, multiplication and division, and category number two is addition and subtraction. And there's a set of rules for each category. The basic idea for multiplication and division is you look at the numbers you're multiplying and evaluate how many significant figures they have. So in this example, you have a piece of paper that's 8.49 inches and for its width, and its length is 11.01 inches. That's 3 sig figs and 4 sig figs. Our calculator is going to give us this answer, which is far too accurate to match up with reality. We cannot say this answer and pretend that we know way more than we do. So we're going to look back at these two numbers and pick the lesser value, which would be the 3 sig figs, and we're going to round our final answer to only show the first 3 sig figs. So 93.4, and then with the 7, we're going to have to round the 7 up and turn that into 93.5. Let's take a moment and work out these two examples. We have a cylinder of 2.45 centimeters tall and radius of 0.333. So we're going to put those into this equation. Pi r squared times h. And the calculator is going to spit out this answer. But I want you to take a moment and determine how many sig figs are in pi, 0.33, and 2.45. Hopefully you came up with the following. Hopefully you came up with infinite sig figs for pi, 2 sig figs for 0.33, and 3 sig figs for 2.45. So of these three values, 2 is by far the smallest. So we're going to look at this answer that the calculator gives us, and we're going to round it down to just the first 2 sig figs. And the first 2 sig figs are the 0.83. After that comes a 7, so we're actually going to record 0.84 as our value. In the example after that, we're doing the density of a solid. Now these values are much more accurate than the previous one. The mass is 4.631. And the volume is 17.5034. Those are really accurate, well-known values. So we're dividing them as mass divided by volume. And when we do division, just like multiplication, we have to figure out how many sig figs are in these values. Well, this is 4 sig figs, and that one is 6 sig figs. The calculator gives us a really long answer, which is far too accurate. We're going to round that to just the first 4 sig figs. And here are the first 4 sig figs. So the final answer is 0.2646. Now let's take a moment and write all this down in our notebooks. Okay, now we're going to move on to addition and subtraction, which has a drastically different rule than multiplication and division. With addition and subtraction, I want you to line up the decimal points. Then you carry out the calculation, and then you figure where the uncertainty begins. So look at this. I've lined it up, and the uncertainty begins right here after this 2. We don't know what's after the 2. It's not necessarily a 0. We've got 4, which is well known, a 2 that's a guess, and anything after that could be a 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, on up to 9. We don't really know. But we're going to go ahead and add it all together, and this is what the calculator says. But everything after the first 3 isn't well known, so we have to round it off. It's not about the number of sig figs, it's now about the decimal places. We're only allowed 1 decimal place because right here we only have 1 decimal place. In example 2, when we line it up, we don't have anything over here. So we're subtracting a very small amount from unknown values. So the result doesn't actually even show up. Imagine, if you will, that you weighed yourself in the morning, got a haircut, and then weighed yourself again. It's highly unlikely that the scale is going to look any different before and after because the amount of weight that's been taken off is insignificant. That's the same thing here. This value is so much bigger than this value that it doesn't even factor into the calculation in the long run. Now I want you to take a moment and write yourself an explanation about the difference between multiplication and division and rounding to the least sig figs versus addition and subtraction and rounding by decimal places. Because you're going to have to do this in all the math problems on tonight's homework.